One day, you're just another producer working quietly at the Disney offices when suddenly someone walks in with a crazy idea to make a new Freaky Friday. Everyone looks around. They all know what they're up against. It's been more than 20 years since the remake was released and almost 50 since the original. Lindsay Lohan, the star, went through tough times. Addiction, scandals, and even legal trouble. Jamie Lee Curtis now walks red carpets at the Dolby Theater with awards in hand, and getting her back on set wouldn't be cheap. Some of the original cast members have passed away, and the ones still around have, at the very least, a reputation that could get them canceled. Still, the movie was approved, which meant they now had to meet all those conditions, and on top of that, make sure the film actually appealed to audiences. So, how are they supposed to pull this off? Go ahead and hit that like button, because what you're about to see might just deserve its own Oscar category. Most impossible shoot of the year. That's how insane the production for Freakier Friday really was. When Freaky Friday came out in 2003, no one expected much from it. It was just another family comedy from Disney, introduced as a remake of the 1976 movie starring Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris. Unlike the original, this version came with a different kind of challenge, working with one actress in the middle of her jump from child star to teen idol, and another who showed up almost out of the blue, just looking for a fun role. The studio didn't have much faith in the project, but it ended up being a huge hit. With a budget of $26 million, it made over $160 million worldwide and became one of the most loved movies of its time, a true instant classic for an entire generation. What a lot of people don't know is that the shoot was just as crazy as the movie's plot. The role of the mom was originally meant for Annette Bening, but she dropped out at the last minute. That's when Jamie Lee Curtis stepped in, so close to filming that she thought they were just bringing her in to fill a spot. Years later, Curtis said Freaky Friday was one of the most fun movies she'd ever made, and that the best part was the chemistry she had with Lohan. Lindsay, for her part, was 16 and at the peak of her fame after The Parent Trap. With fans, media attention, and high expectations all around her, the production came with constant pressure, and some of her behavior started to show signs of the issues that would eventually land her in jail. Even so, everything went better than anyone expected. So why didn't they make a sequel? The answer is simple and, to be honest, a little sad. Disney didn't think it was worth it. At the time, the studio wasn't focused on building franchises like it is today. Each story was meant to stand on its own. If the ending worked and everything felt complete, there was no reason to keep it going. After Freaky Friday, Lohan took off as a star on her own with movies like Mean Girls, while Curtis stepped away from Disney and family films. But time did its part. Over the next 20 years, Hollywood became more and more obsessed with bringing back its biggest hits. Freaky Friday, which had started as a light comedy, slowly turned into a generational cult classic. The pressure kept building, fans kept asking, and eventually, someone at Disney worked up the courage to ask, what if we actually tried? And that's when the real work began. Step 1, and by far the hardest, was getting Lindsay Lohan back. After Freaky Friday, Lindsay Lohan became a star, the kind that shows up on every magazine cover, sells out movie theaters, and trashes hotel rooms. Her career took off. Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, Mean Girls, Herbie Fully Loaded. In just 2 years, Lohan became the face of Disney and one of the most recognizable teen icons on the planet. And then, the trouble started. Just to give you an idea, the actress showed up in every kind of bad headline you can think of. Struggles with alcohol, questionable behavior, public fights, arrests, rehab. We could spend hours going over just a few of her worst situations. But to sum it up, in 2007, she was arrested twice for driving under the influence. In 2010, she was sentenced to 90 days in jail. She went through more than 5 rehab programs before she even turned 27. And by that point, the headlines weren't about her movies anymore. They were about her setbacks. The executives didn't want her in their productions, because with Lohan, things always went off track. Every set ended up behind schedule, and the crew usually ended up frustrated. She'd show up late and, let's just say, not in a state we can describe without risking demonetization. For Disney, a company that builds its image around the spotless reputation of its stars, that was a deal breaker. Over time, Lohan became untouchable in Hollywood. That's why the idea of a Freaky Friday sequel got shelved. Even if fans kept asking for it, even if studio heads brought it up, no one was willing to put someone that unstable in a multi-million-dollar family movie. They tried reaching out to her more than once, but she just wasn't ready. Even so, the motivation to return to her roots led to a real change in the actress. Lohan stepped out of the public eye. She moved to Dubai and chose to leave behind the red carpets, the parties, and the constant presence of paparazzi. She realized that the camera that truly mattered was the one on a movie set, and that no party could bring her the same kind of happiness she used to feel in the studios, where she had once stood out as a child star. Slowly, she started taking on smaller projects, and even though the media kept searching for scandal, Lohan focused on getting better and reconnecting with the producers who had helped her rise to fame. Naturally, the idea of revisiting one of her old Disney films started to come up. After working on a few Netflix projects, one thing was clear. Lohan was once again someone studios could count on, and she wasn't the only one hoping for a return to Disney. Jamie Lee Curtis had a solid career. She went from horror to drama, from family comedies to winning an Oscar, and became a well-loved figure across generations. Still, she was the one who surprised Lohan and spoke up publicly to make the reunion happen. By late 2022, she started saying in interviews that she had already talked to Disney about doing a sequel, and that both she and Lindsay were ready. She brought it up in every interview and at every red carpet event. Her excitement was what finally pushed things forward. In 2023, the two actresses confirmed they were ready to come back, and Disney didn't waste the chance. But getting them on board wasn't enough to bring this family classic back to life. There was still a lot of work ahead. Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis were on board, but no movie works with just its two leads. There was a band, a family, a whole world around them. And if the goal was to bring that story back 20 years later, one big question was bound to come up. What happened to the rest of the cast? Going back to a Disney set might seem exciting, but anyone who's worked in film knows it's basically like walking into a nightmare on purpose. With never-ending contracts, super tight schedules, legal agreements, and the pressure of not ruining a franchise people still love, you can probably guess it's not all that fun once you're actually there. So why would anyone want to return to that kind of chaos? Some did, some couldn't, and a few came dangerously close to never coming back at all. Not for this movie, or for any other. Mary Ellen Trainor, the school counselor who tried to mediate between Tess and Anna, passed away in 2015. We also lost Harold Gould, who had a small role as the grandfather, and Willie Garson, known for his charm and unforgettable roles in so many comedies from that era. His passing in 2021 was a shock for everyone who grew up watching him. But it wasn't all loss. Mark Harmon, who played Tess's fiancé in the original movie, is now something of a TV legend, thanks to his long run on NCIS. He had stayed away from movies for years, left the show in 2021, and seemed ready to move on from that chapter of his career. Still, he agreed to come back for the sequel. Not just for the character, but for the team, the tone of the movie, and because there's something meaningful about closing the loop 20 years later, with the same on-screen couple. Ryan Malgarini, the actor who played Anna's little brother, was only 10 years old when he made the movie. Later on, he appeared in a few TV shows, went into indie films, and eventually became an acting coach. Now, more than 20 years later, he's back as Harry Coleman. There was also the question of Julie Gonzalo, the Argentine actress who played Anna's school rival. After Freaky Friday, she went on to appear in shows like Veronica Mars and Supergirl, but so far, it seems like she hasn't been approached to return. And finally, we get to Chad Michael Murray, the rebel boyfriend, the guy with the motorcycle, the one every teenage girl and mom wanted back in 2003. After that success came One Tree Hill, then full-on fame, and eventually the crash. He felt worn out, empty and lost, like the industry had taken over his entire life. People were worried about him, and for a while, it looked like he might never come back. But he was convinced because of what this project meant to him. Even though his path is very different from Lohan's, both comebacks carry an emotional weight we'll only really see once they're back on screen together. Bringing the original cast back wasn't just a matter of schedules or paperwork. It meant facing what had changed, what had been lost, and what couldn't be recovered. But if they wanted this project to move forward without getting shut down, they were going to have to accept new faces and new ideas. Did you know that the original Freaky Friday script wouldn't get approved today? At the time, the movie was a big hit. It defined a generation and became a classic of early 2000s family films. But if someone showed up with that exact same script today, just as it was made in 2003, it would probably get shut down in the very first creative meeting. It wouldn't even make it past the reading team, because more than 20 years later, some parts of the original story just don't work anymore. Jokes about mental health, flat stereotypes of other cultures, an Asian character whose only role is to do magic, and a marching band scene that, let's just say, it wouldn't survive TikTok. Back then, all of that was seen as part of family comedy. Today, it feels more like a guide to everything you're not supposed to do anymore. And for Disney, that's not a small detail. If they wanted to make a sequel, they had to go over every possible red flag, one by one. The writers were divided, but they agreed on one thing. They needed help. To take on the tricky task of keeping both 2000s fans and new audiences happy, Disney brought in younger writers, people who could add a modern take without losing the heart of the original movie. The idea wasn't to erase the past, but to look at it through a new lens. And that strategy is kind of working for Disney. The goal was clear: keep the same kind of chaos between a mother and daughter who just can't understand each other until they literally step into each other's shoes. But this time, with a more thoughtful take. Jokes with double meaning without falling into cheap stereotypes. Real generational conflicts without needing to lean on race or gender topics. And that's where the real twist came in. If the 2003 version focused entirely on the mother-daughter relationship, this time there's a third generation involved. Lindsay Lohan's character, Anna, is now the mother of 2 teenage daughters, and the new chaos kicks off when one of them switches bodies with her, and the other one switches bodies with her grandmother, Tess Coleman, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. This didn't just make things harder, it made them 3 times as messy. Almost like a mirror of what was happening in the writer's room, the story isn't just about trying to understand one another. It's also about facing the way certain habits, attitudes, and ways of raising kids get passed down from generation to generation. It's basically an emotional multiverse version of Freaky Friday, where generational and hormonal chaos keeps bouncing from one body to another. In this new take, the original idea behind Freaky Friday grows into something more layered and intergenerational, meant to connect with both longtime fans and brand new viewers. But hold on, let's rewind a little, because before any of this could happen, they needed one key thing: writers actually working on a script, right? Just when the idea was ready, the cast was confirmed, and everything looked set for Freakier Friday to start filming. 2023 brought an unexpected turn that threw everything off. The Writers Guild of America strike, followed soon after by the SAG-AFTRA actors strike. It's important to remember that these massive protests didn't just hit Hollywood. They shut down the entire entertainment industry in the US and put a huge number of film and TV projects on pause. And one of those projects was the much-anticipated sequel to this iconic family comedy. Before all of this, the script was already moving forward, with writers working to update the story and adapt it to a more modern and thoughtful context. But when the strike started, all that creative work had to stop right away. Studios, including Disney, had no choice but to freeze pre-production. Nothing could move forward until a new labor deal was in place and things could get back to normal. For months, the project stayed stuck in a kind of limbo, almost invisible to the public, with very few official updates and a lot of doubt about whether the movie would actually happen. During this forced pause, Jamie Lee Curtis took an active role in keeping the project going. All through 2023, in interviews and public appearances, Curtis was one of the most outspoken voices, constantly reminding everyone that she and Lindsay were fully committed for the sequel. They were just waiting for the go-ahead to start filming. Her public support didn't just keep fans interested, it also sent a direct message to Disney executives. Once the strikes were over, this movie needed to be a priority. With her mix of charm and determination, Curtis turned. Finally, by the end of 2023, the negotiations worked out and the strikes were officially over. That allowed the project to pick up again, with new energy and a fresh sense of hope. In March 2024, it was officially announced that Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan would return as the stars. Fans were genuinely excited about the news. Soon after, in June, the first rehearsals and camera tests got underway, marking the official start of a production that seemed ready to push through every obstacle to finally reach the screen. The unexpected break caused by the strikes didn't just push back the original schedule, it also forced the whole production team to adapt to a new reality in the film industry. New rules, changes in timing, and the need to work in a different social and professional environment. In other productions, things were a lot easier. The usual formula says it's all about bringing back a story people love, reuniting the original cast, and rolling the cameras. But nothing about Freaky Friday worked that easily. What started as a feel-good, nostalgic project turned into a long journey full of setbacks, hard negotiations, and creative choices that changed more times than expected. And still, they made it happen. Freakier Friday isn't just a sequel no one expected and that almost didn't happen. It's the result of years of chaos, nostalgia, script changes, cast members who weren't sure about coming back, and some who are no longer around. And even with all that, Disney still found a way to bring back a story that shaped a generation. Now with new rules, new faces, and the same old problems, just updated for today. In the end, a mother and daughter switch bodies. The world spins out of control, and everything feels like it's falling apart, just like real life. But now the question is yours. Did Freakier Friday meet your expectations? If you ask me, I'll always go with the original from 2003, even with all its flaws and things that didn't age well. But the truth is, I'm from a different generation. Now it's your turn. You're the ones in charge, and it's up to you to decide what comes next in your lives and in culture.